Burna Boy is the very person whose music criticized in African Giant. He is a great example of a politically and socially unconscious Nigerian. Hello everyone and happy new year. I hope you're all well and I'm very glad to be back. So this video essay is about a short essay that I wrote some time ago titled The Superficial Burna Boy Conceptualizing the Fela Kuti Complex. My argument was very simple and it was simply that Burna Boy's work was very much about commerce rather than any true values. There must have been something in the water when everyone started equating him to Fela. Burna Boy was never that guy and he really doesn't give a toss about political and social issues. What Burna Boy understood was branding. He knew how to position himself to dominate the charts and to sell records globally. And that allowed him to become one of the biggest modern African artists to date. But there was so much ego play involved in developing that brand image, and I just don't understand why people didn't see through that. It does seem, however, that a lot of the facade has now worn off, I guess due to his bad attitude self and the recent scandals.
Listen, Burna Boy is getting a lot of backlash right now.
Burna Boy has had quite a few incidents on a stage where he bugs out on a fan.
Security, carry this guy come out from my front. You can go to the back though. You can't stay in the front. With your girl sleeping in front of me. This is the off, bro.
Today, I want to unpack and analyse how the persona of a socially conscious African artist was produced and marketed, and ultimately how fictional it really was. So, who is Burna Boy?
And the Grammy goes to... Oh, come on. Twice as tall. Burna Boy.
Burna Boy! The winner is last Burna Boy!
Oh,
Burna Boy!
Burna Boy!
That's the life of the city boy. Oh yeah, yeah. Lambo. Oh yeah, yeah. Stella. Oh yeah, yeah. Chavo. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
Burna Boy is widely known as an Afrobeat artist, but he does claim he's Afrofusion.
Burna Boy has been Afrofusion. Afrofusion is not a box. I didn't want to be boxed into any Afrobeat. I had to create my own fucking thing for you to, you know what I mean?
He was born in 1991, Port Harcourt, to his mother, Bosse Oglu, who is his longtime manager. His maternal grandfather was the former manager of Fela, and that's often cited to make sense of Burna Boy's style and inspiration. Burna Boy grew up in Nigeria before relocating to the UK to further his education. He attended school in the UK before being imprisoned and sent back to Nigeria. In a 2022 tweet, Burna Boy said, "I came into the music industry straight from Chelmsford, HMP. I had no idea I would even live this long. So when people talk about me now, it's all just funny." And that's where he signed to Aristocrat Records and started pursuing music more seriously. That was the period of Tonight, Like to Party, Yawade, Run My Race, and I was definitely a fan in that era. Good times. That was when I had zero responsibilities. Fast forward some years later, after Burna Boy's debut album Life, he released African Giant in 2019, and since then he's consistently risen as one of the biggest global African artists to date. Notably, he made history as the first international Afrobeats artist to secure #1 on the official UK weekly album chart. His album in 2021, Twice as Tall, garnered him a Grammy. In 2024, Burna Boy was listed on the most influential people list, with Time stating that he's history in the making. These achievements have undoubtedly played a monumental role in the global expansion of Afrobeats and solidifying Burna Boy's career internationally. In the period of African Giant, which is going to be our focus here, we see Burna Boy meticulously craft his brand image and music to encapsulate elements of Pan-Africanism. He draws inspo from the pioneer of Afrobeat, Fela.
Well, Fela was a big influence on me.
Okay.
Who himself is widely acknowledged as the most politically and socially conscious African artist to have lived. And by using that style, Burna Boy succeeds in portraying to many people that his music transcends just a great time. I can't overemphasize how significant African Giant was in really cultivating Burna Boy to be the figure that is known worldwide. today. In that album, Burna Boy infuses socio-political themes, shedding light on the corruption and injustice that we see in Nigeria. We see themes of inequality, government failure, and post-colonial disillusionment being woven into his lyric. And this skillfully allows Burna Boy to be positioned as a social commentator through his music, just like Fela. One of the clearest examples of this is in his song Another Story, where he basically walks listeners through a crash course history of Nigeria, spanning from the scramble of Africa to the country's amalgamation and subsequent colonial rule under Britain. The song is supposed to be a bit of a history lesson, and that's how we come to know that Nigeria was indeed sold to a British corporation. That same corporation today is now known as Unilever. And the song is also a pointed critique at current issues politically and socially. Everyone got excited thinking he was doing something really revolutionary here. The music video for Another Story also further enhances the message. It depicts ordinary Nigerians wearing blindfolds, labelled with words such as corruption, greed, violence, which I guess is supposed to be representative of the ongoing issues since the end of the colonial rule in 1960. It's a very on-the-nose visual, but it worked. By looking at Burna Boy's discography, we see so many repeated moments that echo Fela Kuti's style and usage of music as a form of social and political critique.
We know one guy, we know one voice, we know one French, we know one group. I get one child, my mom different house, my pa different house, I want to feel house. Go say I know one guy, I know one guy, I know one belly, I want enjoy, I want job, I want money, I want bill, I still want.
This led to him being positioned by members of the public and critics as a contemporary voice speaking on Nigerian social and political realities, with many informally describing him as the modern day Fela. In fact, in a Rolling Stone article, Burna Boy is acclaimed for being an influential voice not just because he releases African hits for the world to hear, but through the conversations he sparks through his work and his interviews, and that his preoccupation is with the truth and illuminating the ways in which our understanding has been warped by Western homogeny. However, I argue that such conclusion is only possible to reach from afar, albeit completely ludicrous. A more nuanced and better examination of Burna Boy and his craft will show that it's predominantly surface level. That Fela-like image, his preoccupation being with the truth, was a marketing strategy serving his brand image. It's not a genuine personality trait or value. I've always contended that the social criticisms that he infused in his music was a form of commercialized virtue signaling. That was a mouthful. Burna Boy's values and preoccupation with the truth, according to Rolling Stone, ends once you turn off your Apple Music or your Spotify. I would like to preface this video by stating this analysis isn't a comparison between Burna Boy and Fela. It's more about whether we can separate the art from the artist, and also how Burna Boy adopted Fela's style for his own purpose. So to understand Burna Boy's Afrocentric image, it's important to understand who Fela Kuti actually was. After all, he is the blueprint.
Okay, so let me tell you about my favorite Fela Ransan Kuti song.
Yes, if you are in England, music can be an instrument of enjoyment. So you can sing about love, you can sing about whom you're going to bed with next. But in my environment, my society is underdeveloping because of an alien system on our people. It's very difficult for me not to have music that is not politics. Even if it is not politics, it will have to be music that is very culturally aware for people to see the beauty of the African concept.
Fela was born in 1938 at Abeokuta, Nigeria. He was the son of the feminist Funmilayo Ransome Kuti, and he's widely acknowledged as being the pioneer of the Afrobeat sound. Following his 1969 tour of the United States, Fela became really influenced by black radicals of the time. So those would have been the likes of Malcolm X and also the radicals from the Black Panther Party. And it was said that this period marked a turning point for Fela's career. He then began creating creating very politicized music, targeting the Nigerian government, which was then under military rule. By doing this, Fela became one of the most controversial Nigerian musicians. He was very outspoken and completely defied the norms of the time. He hated Western influence, so instead he embraced more traditional African values such as polygamy, and also by embracing traditional African spirituality. And by doing this, Fela was disrupting the post-colonial ideas of African civility. Fela's lyrics weren't just for commerce, they were very much lived, they were part of his identity and his actual beliefs. His body, his home, his relationships all became sites of political and social resistance, and it completely collapsed the boundary between art and life. You wouldn't catch Fela dead doing a happy birthday Tinubu montage.
ST is indescribable.
ST is a legend, bro.
Because if you're so against corruption and you're preoccupied with the truth, why are you fraternizing with political figures? Again, Fela was really outspoken about Nigerian society, much to his detriment. Songs like Coffin for Head of State, Suffering and Smiling, Sorry Tears and Blood are exceptional pieces of work that do very well to satirize and articulate the sentiments regarding the social makeup of Nigeria. And everything that he sings about in his work is very much still true and even more intensified 45 years plus later. I'm not good at maths. Fela's critique, however, of the military government made him a national rebel, and the military government often retaliated with violence. There will be violent raids, he will be imprisoned, he will be attacked by soldiers. One of the most famous attacks, which was believed to be organized by Olusegun Obasanjo, resulted in his mother, Fumilayo, being thrown out of a window by an unknown soldier. She did end up dying from the injuries that she sustained. And I think all of the consequences that Fela endured during the military era is a very good example of what it looks like to be an outspoken activist and a voice of dissent during that time, and also just generally in Nigeria. The fruits that it bore wasn't Lamborghinis or Aston Martins. It wasn't land from governors.
Those that we call celebrities today once existed in traditional African societies, and they are the articulators of the social conditions of our people. This is it. Burna Boy came out publicly to say that he had never collected any dime from any politician. That's a fat lie. And that is why we must tell our people that, you know, prevent yourself from following these people hook, line, and sinker, to the point that, you know, you have to surrender your understanding of your society to these elements.
It brought Fela social exclusion and condemnation. Fela was loved, yes, but he was also widely seen by his own people as rebellious and controversial. And I always argue that yes, Fela criticized the government, but he also criticized Nigerian people. I believe that he believed that they were cowards, and that's a topic for another day. And we see that criticism in Sorry Tears and Blood, where he basically criticizes society for being quite passive and people's inability to stand up for their rights because they're just too scared. Same sentiments were echoed in Burna Boy's Collateral Damage, which emphasizes the same thing in a very similar way.
My people self they fear too much. We fear the thing we not see. One day all of us go die.
Burna urges Nigerians to fight for their rights. The song is basically a parallel of Sorry Tears and Blood. So with that being all said and analysed, I hold quite strongly that Burna Boy's musical prophetism was at large a marketing strategy. Because if you're looking for that level of success, who else can you mirror that has done it before you? Other than Fela. Mind you, I'm not saying that we can't enjoy Burna Boy's music, but it's crucial to distinguish between genuine values and the construction of a brand image. And people don't do that enough for me. Let's take a look at some archives. Here we have PM News in 1997, and it says Fela to face tribunal. Like I said before, he was always getting himself into trouble, and that was the price he paid for being very outspoken. Here we have another article from Drum in 1972, and the headline reads, "You can't gag me," says furious Fela. That's what I say sometimes, you can't gag me. But it looks here that Fela was the one who wrote this column, which is interesting because I never knew that he was writing articles. It says here, I was sitting down in my house one day, getting myself together, when a friend of mine who is a music magazine editor brought in some friends who questioned my political integrity. They accused me of being a pretender, trying to make money out of the issue of Black power. The next article reads, Fela lives forever. I guess this is reported after his death. His death was really, really big actually. He had a huge turnout of public mourners. Here we have the Punch mag, and it says, How They Burnt My Son's House by Fela's mum, and we can see her to the right on the hospital bed. She didn't die immediately, by the way, after being thrown out the window, but I believe it was her injuries that she sustained during that whole ordeal that made her quite frail and ultimately just led to her death. A Rolling Stone article expressed that Burna Boy's activism extends beyond his music and reflects a true commitment to social change. I mean, if you're trying to make me laugh, then you've succeeded. That activism you speak of ends in the studio. When I spoke about this topic on my TikTok somewhat last year, someone commented on the video and said something that was quite important. And it was basically along the lines that Burna Boy could never be an activist, especially in the sense that Fela was. Fela, during the 1960s when he went to America, went through a very specific kind of political exposure. He was in the US during a very charged period and he interacted with radicals. And that shaped his consciousness, giving him a framework and style that he could bring back home. And that matters, of course, because environment shapes you. One's context will produce various levels of consciousness. Whereas what we're told about Burna Boy is that he was born in Nigeria from a relatively comfortable background, moved to the UK, schooled there, got involved with bad gang, was imprisoned and subsequently allegedly deported, and then started making music. So you have to ask, where in that story is there any space for some serious political reckoning? Unless, of course, he was sitting HMP reading revolutionary texts, which is probably highly unlikely. Let's take a look at some examples that will buttress my point, hopefully. In 2021, after winning a Grammy, Burna Boy was gifted land by Governor Wike. It appeared publicly that he accepted the gift. He definitely didn't renounce it. Well, at the time.
Lagos State government will provide a land at OGRA for Burna Boy. Not only are we going to provide that, we're going to give him money to build for himself.
Mind you, politicians should not be gifting anybody land, especially when you consider that a lot of their wealth comes from misappropriated funds. People from Governor Wike's state, Rivers State, were saying that they didn't get their salary that year. So where do we go from here? Governor Wike? Count your days. And it's very, very funny because in Collateral Damage, Burna Boy sings, Ambassador Goody Chop and Governor Goody Chop and President Goody Chop. And those lyrics are basically a critique against the indulgence of the political class. In 2023, during Nigeria's presidential elections, which was arguably one of the biggest elections of recent time, with certain very contentious figures emerging, the atmosphere was understandably quite tense.
We may be hungry, but we can manage our hunger.
And some people expressed their discontent at Burna Boy because he was silent. In response to the criticism, Burna Boy said, I don't know why it's such a big deal to some Nigerians that I have not been vocal about the elections. Personally, I don't have a candidate that I believe in. I've never supported any political party or candidate in my life because I do not want to make you vote and then blame me when the person fucks up as usual. That being said, I hope all votes count and the best man wins. Now, of course, everyone has the right to remain politically neutral and silent. But what's interesting to me is his blasé dismissal of the political situation at the time, especially how his music positioned him as a socially conscious artist. Again, to reiterate, he does have the right to be silent about it. But when you weigh it against all his social commentary and his music, it's easy to understand why people expected more from him, rightly or wrongly. The rebuttal to this is often, oh, but nobody ever says this about Wizkid, no one ever says this about Davido. They have never infused social commentary into their music.
I only wear Prada. I buy out for Anna. Hey, I buy out for 30. And everybody.
And I do think this shows a lot how individuals can capitalize on part of Black social issues, even if they lack a real connection to what they're speaking of, and even if they care very little to change it. Unfortunately for Burna Boy, African Giant made him a hypocrite. And no, you cannot separate the art from the artist in this regard. You can't produce social commentary in your music and proceed to do whatever the hell you like afterwards. It makes you a hypocrite. If anything, one thing I do appreciate about Burna Boy, and one thing that is consistent, is the fact that he's scandalous. In 2022, Burna Boy was caught up in a scandal regarding a club shooting. The backstory was that he was trying to cajole another man's woman, and so much so that it turned into a violent fracas where people were shot. The victim said that it was Burna Boy and his people that were responsible for it. In the lady's Instagram story, she said, "We were visiting Nigeria from America and London for our childhood friend's wedding. On the 8th of June 2022, Burna Boy and his friends opened fire at us at Cubana, Lagos. My partner and his friend were shot, with both needing urgent medical care. A bullet grazed my partner's head and our friend was shot in the thigh, leaving him hospitalized and needing an emergency surgery in Nigeria." That very day, a friend of mine was also present at the club that time. Just saying. Anyway, that scandal was pushed underground with no formal court proceedings being raised. In another violent scandal that was publicized, musician CDQ was alleged that he was stabbed by Burna Boy's people due to an ongoing brawl. All of this is online, so feel free to read and verify. So this really brings us back to a bigger issue, and that's lawlessness, especially amongst the wealthy. In Nigeria, there's a very terrible link between wealth and authority. I've explored this before in my article for the Africa Center and also in my Hush Puppy video essay. The problem is that individuals, when acting unjustly, they can rely on their wealth and status as a shield against reprimand. And I believe quite strongly that Burna Boy is a very complacent beneficiary of this, the same things he essentially critiqued in African Giant. Also, what's noteworthy is how all of this is reinforced by stan culture. They contribute so much to the cycle of no accountability. And this is exactly what Fela was saying when he was criticizing Nigerians. He saw disorder and anarchy and sheepishness, and he said,
"Now your fault be that."
I think it's a great reminder that individual passivity enables a system of chaos. In a live stream, Burna Boy said that he prefers Nigeria to other countries. I think it was US or the UK.
How you like America compared to Nigeria?
You know what it is, bro? I like freedom. It's like the definition of freedom is in my country. I can never be fully free here.
And why do you feel like that? Like, you get what I'm saying?
Because niggas go to jail.
Of course, somebody like Burna Boy would say that. I've argued before that the Nigerian dream is decadence. If you have money, you can do almost anything, often at the direct expense of other people. The freedom that Burna Boy is claiming that he loves so much in Nigeria is unrestrained personal indulgence, the type of freedom only money can buy. Only someone who's incredibly indulgent, privileged, and wealthy would frame Nigeria as so freeing. Recent videos of him last month in December driving recklessly through the city, through Lagos with those stupid police escorts. It's not only tasteless, but it also shows how messed up the Nigerian system is. Why is he racing his cars through the city, speeding as if it's Formula One? Do you own Lagos? No regard for road safety, mind you. In London back in the day, the Arabs used to come, the very rich Arabs used to come, and they'll come with their really expensive cars. And they would do a lot of like shakara on the road, and they'll cause congestion, and they'll do all sorts. And it got to a point where the council was just like, no, you guys cannot do this anymore. It is not your playground. And they basically got banned. But I fear Nigeria is a long way away from enacting those type of rules because money is God. A man who benefits so comfortably from that level of disorder and indulgence is not somebody who should ever be taken seriously. Nor is he someone that should be held as a person that cares about activism and is preoccupied with the truth. He's a hypocrite. Boo. Tomato, tomato, tomato. Nelson CJ from Newsline Mag wrote, Burna Boy has said openly that he is not a political activist of any sort. Instead, he describes himself as someone who sees the truth and isn't afraid to say it. But that is curious considering how often he borrows and designs his own artistic image from Kuti, an artist who never sugarcoated his political engagement in his music and daily life, which is my point exactly. And I love the wording, it's very, very curious. I want to circle back quickly to the violent scandals that I mentioned that took place in Lagos. Earlier, I mentioned that during his time in the UK, Burna Boy was imprisoned. Some reports allege that he was deported as a result of that imprisonment, and that was because it was a gang-related activity involving a murder. I want to stress that there are no confirmed facts about this. Burna Boy also denies all of this, and I raise this not to villainize him, but I think the gang-related context is important when examining his scandals with violent behavior. I think it's high time that we strip away the mythology that often surrounds public figures, because I still don't know how Naira Marley became so popular when he moved back to Nigeria. He was a degenerate in London before he blew in the Nigerian music scene. Naira Marley is an example of Omotaut Lasan Lasan, and it was only till the death of Mohbad which really took him down. But when you think about all the scandals with Mohbad and Naira Marley and all of that jazz, it also tracks because Naira Marley's history is quite interesting. Anyway, back to Burna Boy. Fast forward to 2023 in an interview with Saint Low, Burna Boy said,
You hear most of Nigerian music, or I'll say African music, I don't even know what to say, Afro beats, as people call it. It's mostly about nothing, literally nothing. There's no substance to it, like nobody's talking about anything, it's just a great time.
Obviously, this caused a lot of pushback and anger, with people feeling like he was being very disparaging to his fellow Africans on the world stage. Personally, I do think the sentiments were really odd and misplaced. I found it quite strange and hypocritical considering one of his biggest songs of summer 2023 was Last Last, and he really wasn't talking about anything there either. I guess he thinks because he dropped African Giant and bamboozled people that he gets a get out of jail free card. Not on my watch. I do think the statement was reflective of a very fragile ego, but I do think the delusion from the statement was an attempt to separate himself from his contemporaries. Basically, it was a way for him to just carve out his own category. He's the African Giant, of course. Final thoughts. It would be unfair to label Burna Boy as a political activist, considering the fact that he has stated that he is not political. However, this does not prevent us from examining the contradictions that arise from his music and his behavior. And it appears that he capitalized on social issues for personal success. And not only do I believe it makes him a hypocrite, but I believe it diminishes his work. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Can we separate the art from the artist? I know quite a few people have said that they want the full video for the domestic labor, and I will probably try to do that next. Again, like and subscribe. Please do share my video. You can follow me on Instagram. Anyway, I will see you next time.